Good to see you, boys and girls. How are you today? Now, have you ever had a warning from somebody about something that you shouldn't do? Have you ever had a warning? Luca, what did you have a warning about?
At school, on my iPad.
At school, not being on your iPad. Now, tell us the rest of the story. You were warned. What happened?
I got a timeout.
You got a timeout. Maybe not the best decision that Luca made on that occasion, but he's learning. Now, has anyone ever been told anything else that you can think of about best not to do this? Well, mum or dad have said, don't do this. It's been a warning. Somebody's told you about something that could be dangerous. Can anyone think of anything? What is it?
I don't know.
Can't think of it right now. That's all right. Anybody else think of it? Yes, over here, Katerina.
When my sister tells me not to enter her room and I enter her room and then we start fighting on her bed.
Okay, there's a warning. There's a warning. Well, I tell you what, my story this morning, and I better get into it because we haven't got a lot of time, is about that very thing. What have I got in my hands here? Who can tell me? What are they? Yes, ants. And one of ants, girls, this one here, his name was Antonio. Now, Antonio was a good ant. He always tried to do the right thing. And he loved doing something more than anything else, and that was adventuring. He would come home from ant school on the ant bus and go through his chores and get his homework done, and the next thing he'd be looking to do was to go out and find some new space to explore. He loved doing that. But guess what? One thing he loved more than anything else was when he woke up on a Sunday morning because there was no school and he could go out adventuring till his heart was content. And guess what? Today was Sunday. So he got up and he went into the kitchen and he said, "Hey, Mum." And Mum was there. She made him a lunch and she said to him, "Now, Antonio, are you going adventuring today?" "Yes, Mum." And she said, "All right, now, Antonio, make sure you stay on the ant trail." You know what mums are like? Don't go off the trail because if anything happens to you, there'll be another ant that comes along fairly soon and they will look after you. It's all going to be okay. "Yes, Mum." And so he got his lunch and off he went. Wow, what a beautiful day. The sun was shining. He was happy. Are you happy when you do things you love? Yes. And as he walked along the trail that he'd walked along many times before, he came to a part where it forked in two. And he took one of the directions and he walked along that trail, done it many times before, got to another fork and took the trail to the right. Then he came to a spot which was three-way division, straight ahead, to the right, to the left. He'd never been down the right-hand side one before, so he decided today he was going to do that. A whole new adventure, never been down the right side before. How exciting, girls. And so off he went. And he said g'day to Charlie the caterpillar and Cecil the cricket and all of his friends that he saw as he walked past. Sometimes there was crumbs on the ground that people had left from their picnic. And he would take those crumbs and have a little surprise treat. Well, anyway, he'd been walking for quite some time and he was starting to get a little bit tired. So you know what he did? He decided he was going to stop and have lunch. Is that a good idea when you're tired and hungry? Yeah. So that's what he did. And he opened up his jam and peanut butter sandwich that Mum had prepared for him and he was having a great time munching on that when he heard the strangest sound he'd ever heard before in his life. What do you think that might be, boys and girls? Well, he didn't know. And you know what he did? He got up and he walked a little further to where the noise had come from. And guess what? Then he got to a point where the trail ended. And to go closer, he had to go off the trail. He'd been warned by Mum, don't go off the trail. Oh, well, he was just not wanting to be disobedient, but he just went a little closer. And what he saw surprised him no end. He saw some men talking about creating a whole new world. And to do that, they were going to use this animal that was called a bulldozer that looked very angry when it came alive. biting into the ground, taking holes out of the ground about 100 times as big as the ant holes that he lived in. And he heard the message that a whole new world was going to be created. But in doing that, all of the underground tunnels that the ants had was going to be destroyed. Wow. And then just as he was listening to that message being told, he heard a noise again. Can you picture that? Can you picture what that might be? Can you picture the size of the big mouth on this animal that Antonio saw? Well, he got really frightened, girls. And so he jumped up and he ran as fast as his 3 pairs of legs could carry him along the ant trail till he came to the part where it divided into 3. And he took the turn that he'd taken before that took him back to the part where he was in 2. And then he kept running as fast as he could till he got to the part again where it went into 2. And he kept running till he got right into Ant Village, right into his house, bumped into Mum and... Oh, Mum, I'm so sorry to disobey you, but I heard the most incredible thing today. Did you know that our whole land that we live on is going to be destroyed? All of our homes gone, no more, by this animal called a bulldozer. It's going to happen soon, Mum and Dad. We need to be ready. Well, Mum and Dad, because he was always a truthful ant, they believed him. And they said, you know, we better start getting prepared for this time. In fact, Antonia, have you thought to go in and tell the ant queen about this? Because this is something that everybody needs to be aware of. Oh! So together they hopped on the ant bus and they went into the town, into the city where the big ant castle was. And if ants could talk, I guess Antonio would tell the story himself, but it's just a made-up story. But as they got to the castle, guess what? Antonio crawled up the steps to the castle entrance, and there at the outside of the entrance were the soldier guards ants, the soldier ants standing guard. And they looked down at him, and he mustered up the biggest, strongest, bravest voice he could. He said, "Excuse me." "Yes? What do you want, little ant?" "Oh, I went on an adventure this morning. I went to a place that's far outside of where we live. But guess what? I got a message that everything we know today is going to be no more very soon. We need to be prepared." "Oh, what a good imagination you have, little ant. Run along and play now." "Oh, please, I need to see the Queen." After he continued to persist, the soldier ants looked at each other and thought, well, maybe we should bring him in to see the Queen, even for a bit of entertainment. So they brought him in, and the Queen was willing to see Antonio, and she came out and she said, "Oh, yes, Antonio, what is this message you want to share with me?" He said, "Oh, Your Majesty, thank you for seeing me. I went on a big walk today, an adventure, and I heard a message about something that's coming soon. We need to know about it and be ready. Did you know our homes are going to be destroyed by a big, big animal?" She began to laugh. She laughed so loud, it made Antonio wonder what he said that was so funny. And then she said, "And don't you know we've been living in this invincible city for years? What army do you think is going to be able to overtake where we are?" "Oh, a bulldozer, Your Majesty, a very big angry animal that bites holes in the ground, walks forward and destroys everything." Oh, she laughed. Did she believe him? No. And by now all the other ants from the city had come in along the Queen's chamber, and they were listening too, and they were laughing because the Queen was laughing. And it was a popular thing to do. Antonio said, "I guess what? Your Majesty, please, I could show you where this is if you send a squadron of soldier ants with me, and I could take you there." "Oh," she said. "Very well, young man. I will do that." And so a squadron of soldier ants followed Antonio for several hours back to the place where the bulldozer had been. And sure enough, there it was. Have we got a picture up there? Ben, a picture of the bulldozer that was just sitting there not doing anything. And then you know what? When it wasn't moving and it didn't look very scary, and they just thought, what is this? It was something like showing Ayers Rock or a brilliant sunset or sunrise to a blind person in a wheelchair who had no concept of what it was that he was trying to share and what he'd seen. And after they crawled all over it, they thought Antonio had provided just about as much fun as they wanted for one day. Thank you very much. So they gave him the big heave-ho over the side of the bulldozer, and they all marched their way back to Ant City. And Antonio and his mum and dad and some friends and others that had believed his story, they went and made their way to the shade of an oak tree and stayed the night. And the next morning, just as the sun was beginning to show its face, the sound began again. And you know what? As Antonio listened to the sound of that bulldozer heading in the direction of Ant City, knowing what was going to happen, he wondered, would they think about what he had told them? Would they recognise that he tried to warn them? And would they be safe? Well, you know what, boys and girls? The Bible gives us warnings about what will happen at the end of time. And it's a book to understand and know, because in there is truth about what we can expect. Because Jesus is coming back, you know. And when he comes back, do you want to be ready? Put your hand up if you want to be ready. Now's the time to be ready. Thanks for listening to my story. You can go back to your seats.